And is this how chatbots work?
Well, chatbots, we can actually compare them to language models in a sense that the user is actually providing an input in natural text and they are expecting an answer in return. However, chatbots could be something very domain specific. They are tailored to your business, let's say the opening hours or a phone number that I could call in order to get customer support. This is something that the language model cannot actually answer. If I want very specific information, let's say related to healthcare, or to medical field, I cannot rely on the language model in general because it was trained over a massive amount of information from multiple domains. So chatbots, to decide whether I should integrate a chatbot in my business or whether I need to go and use the API integration of the language models, that depends on what I'm trying to get. And something else that we need to focus on is data privacy, because we have heard a lot that the information that is being provided to many language models, unless they were considered to be open source, they are actually being sent back to the source. So, for example, ChatGPT, OpenAI is acquiring all the information that we are actually inputting. So it is never a good practice to input information related to the company you're working for, or to the recipient of the email, or if you need, for example, to provide something related to your bank accounts. This is something that you should never put. And in all cases, when you use ChatGPT, this is something of the tips that are usually presented the first time you use the language model.
Talking about chatbot, basically, we know how important they are nowadays in the integration of businesses. If we were to guide business owners or entrepreneurs when it comes to such integration, do you think that they will need or require outsourcing of a developer, or they can do it themselves? And if that's the case, what are some key steps to think of or to consider when trying to create, develop, and activate a chatbot?
Okay, so usually chatbots, we have the ability to build them from a business user perspective, because a lot of tools nowadays exist which allow even non-technical people to build their own chatbots by providing what we call intents. So why the user is actually interacting with the chatbot. And once we guess the intent, that will happen through what we call an utterance. This is the input or the prompt, if I want to compare it with the language model, and accordingly the answer that is expected from that chatbot. So this is something that you could actually put on Excel or in a JSON format, you upload it, or simply you can put it visually. For example, we have Microsoft Bot Framework. They provide what we call Lewis and Q&A Maker, because usually chatbots are trained over FAQs for businesses, which will make it easier for customers to ask the usual questions, and therefore they could get the answers. We have also IBM Watson. This is another. These are paid services. There are many, but these are the ones that I'm familiar with.
And you wouldn't require development?
The only part related to development is when you need to integrate that bot with your website, for example. If you want to give it a persona, if you want to change the design of the native bot that actually exists, there you would need a web developer, because it's in HTML or React native, so on and so forth. So you would need someone to put the persona, to set the tone, to define what you actually want to get in terms of style, of animation, and what comes with it. From non-paid services, you have, for example, Dialogflow. You have Raza that you can also develop. So these are open source chatbots, which require a little bit more development in order to set the actions, to define the intents, and to later on define the answers along with the example, with the answers in return.
And if we were to think of key things to guide throughout the process of developing chatbot, I think it's important to first identify the objective. Why do we want to build the chatbot? Is it for customer care purposes? Is it for something else? Second, I think the user journey is super important. If you want to dive a bit into that.
Effectively, before you start putting that chatbot in action or start implementing the chatbot, you have to sit with the business owners and you have to understand, as you mentioned, why do I need the chatbot? What is the intended tasks to be completed through that chatbot? And accordingly, we have to define what we call the user journey. So we might have multiple types of users that are going to use that chatbot. And the most important part is to know when to escalate to actual agents, because sometimes customers get stuck when communicating with the chatbot. So let's say when they fail a couple of times, the chatbot should automatically suggest that if you need an actual assistant, we will put you in contact with an actual human agent. So that will make them more comfortable. And something to consider, that chatbots will fail. And this is not a big deal, or this is not something that we have to fear, because again, chatbots will learn from the data that we provided in the first place, and again from the input that the user provided. So sometimes the user might have formulated their query or their input in a way that wasn't very familiar to that chatbot. So that's why we need to keep logs, which means save every input that wasn't answered successfully. And accordingly, we can revisit those inputs. And if we already had the answer, then this becomes a new utterance that we can add to our training data, and therefore the chatbot will learn. Of course, it might take years in order to be able to answer every single question that the user has. But at least you will have something to start with, and you can always be friendly, answering with a sorry message and suggesting or proposing to contact a human agent, because again, you don't want your customers to leave. So the customer churn is quite important.
Exactly. So if we were to continue tapping into AI applications when it comes to marketing and education, and I'll start with marketing, it goes without saying that the usage of AI tools, it has been expanding tremendously, right? When it comes to content generation and content moderation. Having worked in social media and digital for a while now, I can definitely say that those tools have been really helpful when it comes to identifying the sentiment, analyzing the sentiment, understanding the user-generated content that is being provided. Is it good? Is it bad? Can we benchmark it? How are the competitors doing, etc.? And I think this gives us as marketing teams basically the ability to spend less time on swifting and sniffing around those content pieces, and having more time to craft the next campaign by understanding the output that came to life basically. But to reach that full assessment, to know to understand that whole benchmark and sentiment split, whether it's positive, negative, why are the competitors doing better here, why are we not, etc. A lot of work is being done in the background, right? I want you to briefly debunk this in terms of sentiment analysis, and just tap into the difference, if exists, when it comes to languages. Is it same for Arabic and English, or it's not?
Okay, so as you mentioned, it's quite important nowadays for businesses to rely on AI, not just for sentiment analysis, but also for prediction and recommendation systems. So if I understand the user profile, how they interact, what they like, it will make it easier for us to recommend stuff they like. And this is something I know we're all familiar with Netflix. Yeah. So the recommendation comes from the geographic location in, let's say, Lebanon, or any location that you have, and according to similar movies that you have seen or similar series that you have seen before. So this is a recommender system that is predicting what you might like based on your previous history. Now, again, if I am offering specific products or services, I would like to understand how my customers feel about it. And that's where sentiment analysis is quite important. So sentiment analysis, you can look at the whole product review to understand if it is positive, negative, and you can also focus on what we call aspect-based sentiment analysis, which means that I'm more interested in comparing the battery between two brands of mobile phones. So which one is better, or the voice quality when we're making a phone call. So these are called aspect-based sentiment analysis. And to be able to achieve the sentiment analysis, I need to process natural language. So if I have tools that could process English language, therefore I would get more accurate sentiment analysis results. If I don't have sufficient tool in Arabic, therefore one tweak, I could actually translate from Arabic to English and then apply to English the sentiment analysis, but I might lose some information. That's why most languages are investing a lot of research and effort to build tools that could understand the language itself, because sometimes in translation you might lose meaning, because it's very hard to understand sarcasm, it's very hard to understand all emojis, and therefore we might miss something, whereas if we can understand the language itself, therefore we could get what we want from the essay.
Super. If we were to tap into the education part of things, a while back you were talking about how you see the future of education at universities and the AI maybe replacing instructors at some point. And in fact,
not just that, not replacing instructors, But of course, it's going to be more challenging for educators and for
Okay.
instructors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, today, on an application level, Duolingo has decided to integrate more and more in their system, basically AI, when it comes to developing the content for their courses. And in a real life model, Harvard, on the other hand, also decided to kind of take AI into implementation and have it run the introductory course for students without any intervention for computer science, without any intervention by instructors. What are your thoughts on that? Where are we headed?
Yeah, definitely. As we mentioned in the beginning, using those tools is quite important. But we need to look at educational sector or even at any sector in a way to integrate, to adapt, to learn how to use these tools and to move forward. So we can no longer stay in the education field the way that we have been doing for the past 20 years. So why I said that it's not yet there to have educators replaced completely by AI systems, I still need at least someone to supervise the result, whether it is accurate or inaccurate, whether it is correct or not correct, because AI tools do not have actual evaluation metrics nowadays. So you have to rely on the user interaction to understand if this is correct or not. So if, let's say, Harvard, they have designed their own language model that targets computer science students to make them learn how to actually code. But if the system generated an incorrect code or a code that is not optimized, a newcomer, a new student would not know that.
Yeah.
So I need the supervision of an instructor to actually help me with that. I think what will happen in a short period of time is that educators who know how to leverage AI tools, those will be a substitute for educators who do not know how to use these tools. The same happened for medical doctors, for business owners, for every field. You need now to have an AI that is integrated somehow, even though it might not be needed in the business, but because now it is becoming a trend, everybody wants to have AI in their businesses. At least we can use them to make some daily tasks easier to achieve, to make our employees more productive, rather than simply make them replacing those employees. So the combination of both humans and AI tools, this is what is going to drive the business, at least in the coming few years.
What if AI was regulated? Do you think this would change the equation, and this would basically disable it from taking over and from having abusement of such tool or such AI?
I think regulations and ethics are quite a challenge for AI nowadays, because people are really happy with the AI tools, so they are using it in a variety of ways, even if it's sometimes considered to be abuse for other people. So we know, for example, now for a fact that Meta is implementing or developing what we call voice box application. And this application, you can provide it with text input, and then you can only use a couple of seconds of audio from any person, and then they can start playing it with that voice, whether it was an audiobook, whether it was a message that you write. It can help you with the noise cancellation, removing some voices from the background. So the intention was good, to help people edit voice notes, or to help people edit audio and videos. Yes, exactly. But it is kind of scary, because now, let's say you can mimic a message from a president of one country, offending a president of another country. So that could actually throw you in a war. So that's why they were still waiting on the best way to regulate this, or to have like a watermark or a stamp that shows that this was generated by voice box. So we would know that it was generated by AI and it wasn't something.
Does it not require any consent from users to use someone else's voice?
Not really, because if you have already the voice, the audio, then you can automatically play it and they can learn from it. So.
Wow.
Something like deepfake that exists today.
Yes.
So it doesn't really require any consent. It relies on being responsible from the end of the user. That's why if we raise enough awareness, users are responsible. So I need to use those tools, I need to leverage them, but not for cheating and not for making my job easier in a way that I don't have to pitch in anymore. It's simply to make me more creative, to give me more time to think about more challenging solutions, And of course, the regulation and ethics are quite important, because we need nowadays tools that will tell us that this was generated by an AI system, while this was generated by humans. And that comes also to the question of copyrights in media, in art, in song writing, or artists that are drawing some paintings. So if they are using AI models, we have multiple questions. Who should be credited for that?
Yeah.
The AI model or the artist himself?
Spot on.
Yeah.
Especially in the world of NFT now.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, I think the discussion was very insightful for me, at least.
Thank you.
I hope it's very beneficial for you guys. Thank you so much for pitching in today. It was a pleasure to talk to you on a more professional level than on a personal level when it comes to this topic.
I tend as an educator to talk a lot, so I hope I provided enough easy information, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm always proud of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. See you next time, guys. Ciao.